it's become very popular to fill blemishes, holes, occlusions, cracks, broken pieces in wood turning with the turquoise color. And I've done it with different I've had different attempts at this, and sometimes it seems like it works really well and other times it doesn't. This is a piece I did, and it was a really nice burl. I stabilized it, and then I filled this. This is milli putty with a bit of color in it. I mean, it doesn't look like turquoise, but it was very effective. I was actually just looking at this piece the other day that I did, and this is actually a couple of years ago I did, and it just, again, I actually don't remember what I used, but it didn't work out very well, and it's possible to see here. I obviously had a go with using some stone in there as well, but it's very washed out. I mean, it did its job nicely, but the color's just not great, and I just imagine how nice this piece would be with the right colors and the right textures in there. And I didn't know the answer, and so I thought I would actually have a go and try some different techniques and see which ones work. So I just created this. I think it's a piece of, I'm going to say cedar. Ran it through the CNC and made these different shapes. So sort of a kind of crack shape and then a circle just to get a solid piece. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix up some, 5 of them are going to be resin, one's going to use CA glue. And I'm just going to fill these, and I'm going to see which of them have a sort of the best aesthetic, which of them look the best, perhaps which of them are able to be finished well, because some of these stones, although the stones are, as stones go, they're very soft, they're much harder than the wood. So just see which of them are easiest to finish as well. And the things I'm going to try, I picked these up on, I'm going to say Amazon, I think it was. I'll put links down below. This is a coarse stone, and it looks fantastic. What I might do with this one is I might try and sort of sink the stone in there and then make sure that the top is just resin, because I know resin, Alumilite resin finishes beautifully. The stone might be quite difficult to do, so I'll see how that one goes. This is from the same company, and this is a fine stone, and it's interesting how different the colors are. This is much closer to this color, but perhaps when it's wet with the resin, we'll see how that one goes. So I'm going to try those two. I'm going to try an acrylic paint. It says cobalt blue, but it is sort of quite close to that color. It's probably a little bit too much, but again, just thought it'd be nice and interesting to try it with an acrylic. The next one is this one, which is a fine stone, which is, it feels like it's sort of, actually it's not closer to that color, but it's certainly not the same as this color. I think I got this from Michael's, so I won't put a link into this one, but Ashland. So I think this is from Michael's. It was probably very inexpensive. It looks a little bit more like glitter to me. Again, we'll give this one a go. And then this one, which I think is also from Amazon, I'll try and find out. It's called Black Diamond, and it's just a very different, it looks more like sort of makeup than anything else. But we'll give that one a go too. And then the 6th one is I'm going to try this medium stone, which I like, but I'm going to use CA glue to stick it in there. We'll see how that goes. I may end up putting a little bit of resin on the top. So I'm going to go mix up some resin, and then we'll mix up the 5 different colors and get them set into here, drop it into the pressure pot, leave it overnight, and then we can come back to it tomorrow and take a look and see how it goes. Okay, so mixed up a batch of resin. This is Alumilite. It's got about a 40-minute working time, so I should have plenty of time to do this one. And I'm just sort of eyeballing it, thinking I might just put a little bit more of this medium stone in. Actually, yeah, I'll put a little bit more in, but it's pretty good. Actually, I remembered I got the stone from Etsy, so I will put a link in below. Let's just sprinkle a little bit more in. If it's good, they sell it in much bigger packets. Okay. And the problem with this one is going to be getting it into the smaller crack, I think. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. But I do have some toothpicks that'll help me do that. This is going into number 1. way too much of that, but that's okay. And with this one in particular, I won't put this back on the lathe and try and use a cutting tool. I probably won't even use one of my ones with the replacement heads in it, because I'm pretty sure that's just going to destroy the cutting tool. So actually, given that I've got some left here, I might as well just see if I can fill the number. I'm thinking this might be, oh, okay, no, it's going in. I guess the pieces are smaller than I thought. Okay, so number 2, this is the fine powder. It seems to be soaking it up more than the stone, which would make sense. It's going to be actually just quite a nice consistency. It feels like that would be able to work that quite well into cracks and things. Yeah, that feels like that's gone in there very nicely. Again, might as well just put some into the corresponding number. Wasn't really the plan, just showing off what you can do with a CNC. If you're actually listening to me doing this in real time, you should probably think about getting a live. I would fast forward through this because it's just going to be a little bit repetitive. So this is the acrylic. And I have mixed paints in with this resin before, and it doesn't seem to affect the resin. I was always a little bit concerned that the paint might have some sort of adverse reaction with the resin, but the resin seems incredibly inert, which is probably why it's so good. Although that's actually very stringy. And then I guess it's acrylic, so that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah, that is okay. So this is definitely not as easy to work with as the fine stone was, which was a really nice consistency. And my guess is there's going to be some pretty big bubbles in there. Yeah. So definitely on a sort of workability perspective, not particularly a winner. I mean, the color's certainly bold, but it has no texture, and as I say, it's a bit like working with chewing gum rather than resin. Yeah, look, I don't know if you're seeing or not, but there's significant bubbles in there. Yeah, okay, well, see if I can just work it down into the crack. Yep, I am not loving that at all. Okay, we'll leave that one to settle in there a little bit. Okay, so number 4, make sure we use the right one, is the ash. This is the one that's a little bit glittery. To be fair, the resin is actually getting a little bit thicker, so we'll see. This feels, this is quite gritty as I'm working it. It seems to have dulled the colour. It's actually quite colourful in its container, but it doesn't feel quite as colourful. And also, I'm not really doing it any favours the way I'm working it in, so in defence of the acrylic, I could have done a better job sort of working it in there rather than just piling it on top. But I mean, this is a relatively easy thing that I'm putting it into. It can be if you're working on certainly on a curved bowl, actually working the resining into a crack can really be quite a challenge, because you're working on a curved surface, which is just a bit of a pain. But okay. Then number 5, this is the one that, as I say, looks a little bit more like makeup to me than anything else. Okay, so this one as well is very much needs more resin in it. It's soaking it up. So put this into 5. So definitely easier to work than the acrylic. Okay, so for number 6, I'm going to use the stone again, the medium stone. They do a thicker stone. And I think I'm going to try 2 different things. I'm going to, in the circle, I'm going to actually super glue the stones into the bottom, and then try and leave it sort of a couple of mil from the top, and then fill the top with resin. This one here I'm going to just fill all the way with the super glue. Okay, so this is a very thin super glue, CA glue, which I like. And what I'm basically going to do is drop stones in, and then a little bit of glue on top, and then some more stones. Don't use an accelerator when you do this. It'll turn white. It sort of goes almost frothy. So try and avoid that. So I'm just going to try and do 1 layer of stones. And then I'll drop some super glue on top of that. And as I say, this is the very thin super glue. I got this one from Amazon for sure. Comes with some nice applicators and spare tops and things. So I think it's worth it. I'll put a link into the comment section, description. So as I mentioned, what I'm doing on the left hand piece is I'm going to fill it right to the top. The sort of the crack shaped piece is going to be filled to the top. So it's actually higher than the wood. And I'm going to sand this, as I say, not turn it. And then I am going to put a little bit more in the right hand piece, but I'm going to leave that one so that the stones are below the level, and I'll fill the rest of that with resin. So that one I'm sort of almost guaranteed that I'm going to get a nice finish on. Just see how it looks when they're not all the way up to the top. Now that's going to be something that is not possible to do on a thin bowl, because you're not going to have enough depth to effectively create like a window above it and a window below it. But for this experiment, I'm just interested to know how that goes. Ideally, and I may pay the price for this, I would like that glue to dry completely, probably, at least an hour, probably longer. is when I put the resin on top of that, which I'll have to do within the next 10 minutes, I do have a bit of a concern that it's going to react with the super glue, which I've seen it do in the past, and it can turn white. But we'll give it a go. It's, you know, nothing. It's just an experiment. It's just a piece of scrap wood anyway. So let me just see. Yeah. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to put some more super glue on this one, but I think I'm going to leave that, and when it comes out of the pressure pot, I'll just do another thing of resin and put that on top. Otherwise, these are just going to float away in the resin, which will defeat the object of what I'm trying to see. Is basically, can I lock these in place, cover them with resin, and then come up with a, you know, really nice finish on top of the stone that looks really natural and hasn't been cut at all. But this is going to take too long to set. I'm actually thinking I may have been better with a slightly thicker super glue, but we'll see. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this as it is right now, drop it into the pressure pot, leave it there for 24 hours, or till tomorrow at least, and see how these look. I mean, I think you can sort of see already. Okay, okay, so here's one thing that happened. There must be a crack in the wood all the way through, so the super glue, the super glue has gone through the wood, and now my piece of wood is stuck to the paper on the table. Another reason why I put paper on the table. So anyway, if I had bloopers, if my whole video wasn't basically a blooper, I would put that in the bloopers. So anyway, I'm going to lift this off the paper and get it into the pressure pot, and then we'll take a look at it tomorrow. So here's the sample out of the pressure pot and left for about a week to set. And I'll be honest, I'm not terribly impressed with any of them. They've all set really nicely. They're all nice and hard. There's some shrinkage on this one. I think there's probably a crack in the wood. I think that one leaked out to the bottom. So I think that's what happened there. This one looks like it's okay though. This is the medium stone, and just set in resin, and it's actually set quite nicely underneath. It's a little bit hard to see the depth, I'm sure, but this is maybe a millimeter of resin on top of it, so that's interesting. This is the fine stone. It's just it's a little bit bland. It's not as bland as the other fine stone. This Ashland one, that one's really sort of become washed out. The acrylic's interesting. The acrylic has bubbles in it and sank here. This was, I think, just testament to the fact it was hard to work with the acrylic. It really did become like working with sort of toffee. This is the CA glue with the resin on top, and I don't know if you can see or not, it's certainly not as clear, and there's white there. I think the CA glue's just set a little bit hard, certainly in comparison to the resin, so I think the resin certainly wins over the CA glue. And then this is the black diamond, this one, which is just a little bit too sparkly for me. So I think it's very much going to be what effect you're trying to get. So, you know, in this darker wood that I'm going to be doing a sample in, I'm thinking probably the stone, if I can get a nice effect on that. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to turn it. I was just going to sand it, but because I'm not terribly impressed with any of them, I actually want to see how well they turn. I use these negative rake carbide bits. I've got a couple of old bits because I'm thinking I could destroy the edge. So I have a square edge and the round piece. So if you're not familiar with a negative rake, it works really well on resin. If you try and use a regular cutting bit, it can shatter the surface. It can actually be really hard to work. But the negative rake bits are just incredible. So as you can see, these are older pieces, so I don't really mind if they get broken. So I'm going to mount this and just turn them down. I just want to see what happens with the stone, whether I can cut the stone so I'm leaving exposed stone, or whether it's just going to shatter off the stone. Definitely going to be wearing protection for this one because I'm going to have little bits of stone flying all over the over the room, I'm pretty sure. So I'll get this mounted on the lathe and get set up, and we'll see how that goes. So this is them off the lathe, and it's turned out much better than I expected. I'm just going to wet it just to sort of show you what it would look like if it was properly finished. But the medium stone didn't shatter. I was concerned it would just pull the pieces out, but it hasn't. It's actually, I think, really come up with a really nice effect. And the fine stone actually looks much better as well. There's a little bit of pitting in there, but I think that's just because the stone's going to have air in between it, and even in the pressure pot I can't do much about that. I could be a little bit more careful with mixing the resin. You know, this was fairly sloppy because I was just looking for a different effect. I'm actually wondering what these two mixed together would look like. I might even use that one on my test piece. The acrylic, I was sloppy with the acrylic. I didn't realize the acrylic was going to be quite as hard to work as it could have been. And I do wonder if I had warmed up the resin, got the resin much thinner, or used a thinner resin, perhaps mixed less acrylic in and then just worked it really carefully, it could have worked. But I'll be honest, it kind of just looks like plastic to me. It's, you know, it might work for some things, but I don't think I'll be trying that again. The fine stone, the other one, the ash, it's just not doing it for me. It's just a little bit sort of, a little bit of sparkle in there. It finished okay as well. And then the black diamond, the black diamond's actually better than I thought. It's probably a little bit hard to tell. It's got those sort of swirls in it that you see people, when people are working sort of these resin desks and things, they like to get a sort of swirl in there. So it has got that in there a little bit. But again, to me, it doesn't actually, it doesn't really have the effect I was looking for. It's you know, just doesn't really sort of look like stone. It just looks like a color. So I think for me, the clear winner are 1 and 2. And as I say, what I might do in my test piece, in this piece here, is I think I might just mix up a combination of the two and just see what that looks like. But I'm a little bit tempted with the crack being big just to use one, but I'll try the two. I sort of wish with hindsight that I'd tried the two instead of this one. The super glue one just, you know, it turned fine. It didn't shatter off or anything. It stayed there, but because the super glue went white, that's a bit of a loss. So anyway, I'm going to mix up a combination of these two in resin, get that poured into this test piece, which is the piece that I cracked, and just let that set overnight. Take a look at that tomorrow and turn that into a platter or something and see what it looks like as a finished object. So I filled this one with a combination of the medium and fine stones, and I'm going to put that in the pressure pot. I also got to thinking that this is a uniform width, and it's wide enough for the stones to get into, but I wondered what happens when it gets thin. It's a little bit hard to see, but this goes to nothing here and then to a wider gap. So I filled this with some of it too, and I'm just interested to see, presumably the stones won't go all the way over. I just want to see what that looks like as a transition, because, you know, maybe this is a technique I would only use when there's a wide enough gap for the stone to sit in. So I'll get these put into the pressure pot, leave them overnight, and turn them and see what they look like turned. As promised, here are the finished pieces that I turned. I actually did this a while ago, so they've gotten a little bit scratched up, and I've actually been using them for demoing how to brand pieces. I'll put a link to that video at the bottom. But they actually came out nicely. I mean, no real surprise, because this is the synthetic turquoise stone that I got from Etsy. I'll put a link below. But this is the one that definitely came out best in the test earlier in the video. I'll just zoom in. You can see that it's a pretty uniform distribution through the resin. Looks nice, looks good front and back. I should have tidied up the wood there a little bit. But really, I think that's really the effect I'm looking for typically, is it's not so bold that it takes away from the grain of the wood. On the thinner one, it worked actually much better where the crack was thin. At this end, it gets a little bit washed out, so I think I probably just didn't put enough of the actual turquoise stone in there. So I was doing that again. I'd just be a little bit careful. It probably floated, but certainly when you look at the front end of that, it's the front of the piece, it's a little bit washed out there. but the rest of it really, I think, came out nicely. I'm very happy with that. So no surprise, that was the one that we liked most on the previous piece. I did find this actually just knocking around. This is a piece I did a long time ago, and it must have been one of those things that looks a little bit more like makeup than the stone, because it gets that swirl effect. But I actually wish I knew what it was, because that's a nice finish. It goes particularly well with all of the character in this wood, I think. This piece is it's a little bit dodgy. I won't be selling this, but anyway, I actually thought that came out nicely. A very different effect than this, where it looks a little bit more like a natural stone. But just wanted to share that one with you too. So if you're interested in more pieces like this, more videos like this, then subscribe. I'm trying to do more of these. I'm gonna try messing around with turquoise and black resin. I'm gonna get some of the larger turquoise pieces and see what that looks like, but I'll do that in a separate video. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Take care. Thanks.